Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Go ahead.
Hi,
Rachel.
everybody. Oh, yeah. Hello, everybody. That was Josh, MAPC from MAPC, project manager for this. But first, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight in your busy schedules to Wrentham's Master Plan, Vision of Tomorrow, 2030. We have a full agenda tonight, so I'm going to get right into it. Our agenda tonight is going to be, welcome introductions. I'm Rachel. Land use and zoning. Oh, I have a different spreadsheet, sorry. Okay, so my name is Rachel Benson. Technical difficulties. I am the Director of Planning and Economic Development with the town of Wrentham, and I will be going through the Master Plan Steering Committee, which is the next slide. So this steering committee, which has had a pretty good representation of all the boards and committees in town. We've been working on this master plan for about over a year and a half almost now. A lot of different backgrounds and perspectives, and it's been really great to work with everybody here. Let you give a little bit of a read on that one. And I'm sure some people, a lot of these people here too. So I'm going to now turn it over to Josh, who is going to introduce the MAPC staff. Take it away, Josh.
Great, thank you, Rachel, and thank you everybody for joining us. And sorry, Rachel, I'll throw you a curveball. I did move a slide there. I forgot to tell you about that. But the agenda.
Keep me on my toes.
That's right. My name is Josh Fiala. I'm a principal planner at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I'm joined by several of my colleagues this evening who will be presenting and engaging with you all. We're really excited to do that. So I'm joined with Andrea and Courtney from our land use department, and Mara, Audie, and Travis from our transportation department. MAPC is the Greater Boston Area's regional planning agency. We have been providing planning assistance to 101 cities and towns in the Greater Boston area, including Wrentham, since the 1960s or so. And so we're happy to be a part of processes such as master plans and providing technical assistance to our communities. The agenda, which Rachel started to get into, and then I moved this slide from her, is on the screen now. So we really have three topics of the master plan. Phase 2, which we're focused on this evening: land use and zoning, open space and recreation, and transportation. The flow of the meeting will have our team present briefly on each topic to give a foundation for discussion, ending with a set of draft goals that have been put together for your feedback this evening. We will then open smaller group breakout rooms so that we can hear from you and hear as many voices as possible, while also providing a shared Jamboard for you to add notes and comments on those draft goals. And that will help us solidify and advance the draft goals and really make sure that your views are reflected in the master plan and how it's all coming together. A few housekeeping items first. The forum is being recorded, as you might have noticed when you joined or were part of, get that notice on your screen. That's so that the meeting can be available to watch for those unable to attend live. It will be posted on the project website. During this presentation, we want to get through a lot, so we do have the participants muted just so we can get through the presenting of the material. But then you do have access to the chat for questions or comments. And then we will be doing a few Zoom polls to gather feedback from the group in the large room. And then again, you'll have more free reign for discussion in the breakout session rooms. So just before we get into the topics, I want to provide background on what this is all about. So a master plan is a town-wide planning effort that will guide decision-making and priorities in the town for the next 10 years. A master plan is developed through a public process using meetings such as this one this evening, and we're engaging residents and stakeholders through these meetings and a series of surveys. It's guided by the master plan committee that Rachel introduced and will be adopted eventually by the planning board. This master plan process has occurred in 2 phases. So phase 1 was completed last year towards the end of November. Phase 1 defined a vision statement for the town, and the goals and strategies for the topics of housing and economic development, and following a very similar process with meetings such as this one this evening. Phase 2, which we're currently in the process of, is establishing goals for the Phase 2 topics. That's where we are within this timeline. Phase 2 is projected to run through the summer, with a master plan document finalized towards the beginning of the fall. And we have 3 additional topics which are involved in Phase 2 beyond the 3 that we're discussing this evening. Many of you have already participated either in Phase 1 or Phase 2 meetings and surveys. A community survey about Phase 2 topics was out at the end of last year, received a great turnout of about 800 responses. So kudos to the town of Wrentham for getting the participation out on that survey. It was really fantastic data for us to move forward with each of these topics. Here's a quick example of the type of data and feedback received through the survey. This chart shows the results of which master plan topics are most important to you. 2 of our topics this evening are at the top of that list. So we've got open space and recreation and land use and zoning, which we'll be discussing this evening. You can see the others are the balance of the 6 topics of the Phase 2 portion of the plan. So enough about us. Let's hear some about who's in the audience this evening. I'll put up a Zoom poll now. You can scroll down through that poll and answer the questions. Leave that up for a minute or so, just so everyone's got time to do that. So you should see that pop up on your screen now. So we have a few demographic questions. You can scroll down through them. There's 5, I believe. And what we're trying to do, collecting this information, is to compare it to the town's demographics. So we're trying to better understand if participants in this process are relatively representative of the town, and that will inform our future outreach and engagement. So we thank you for your responses. You also have the option to prefer not to answer to any of those questions, which you may prefer not to answer. So please take a moment to do that. Looks like we've got, my current tally is about 55 participants in the meeting. We've got the returns coming in now. I see about 80% participants have completed, so I'll give it just a couple more seconds. All right, so thank you for that. I'll end that poll now. As I said, we use this information to make sure that we stay on track in terms of overall community engagement and outreach through this master plan process. So now, without further ado, we do want to get straight into the topics because we have a full agenda. And so I would like to turn the mic over to Andrea Harris-Long from MAPC, presenting on the topic of land use and zoning.
Thanks, Josh. Good evening, everyone. It's really nice to meet you virtually. Thanks for taking time to talk about the master plan tonight. So I'm going to be talking about the land use and zoning chapter. And this is really important because this is the part of the master plan that talks about how and where future growth and development and redevelopment should occur. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. So as part of each of these chapters and elements, we've done an existing conditions analysis where we wanted to get a better understanding of sort of what's going on now to inform eventually the goals and the strategies that will be in the master plan. We always like to start the land use and zoning work with looking at the existing land uses. This is something that we gather by looking at assessors data and then doing some ground truthing. So you can see the map here. It's probably a little hard on this slide, but you can kind of see the different land uses that are throughout Wrentham. About 43% of the land is in a residential use. That's not too surprising. That's the yellow parts on the map. About 22% of the Wrentham's land area is public lands. This is in part because there's the large state hospital campus, there's the state forest, some other public lands. And then about 12% of the land area is in the commercial or industrial use. So on the map, that's the pink or the purple areas. looking at sort of what's been going on with land use and zoning in the town. Historically, through past master plans and past planning efforts, the town has really been focused on directing growth to downtown and other existing centers like Wrentham Corner, the premium outlets area, to really make sure that infrastructure is being best utilized and to prevent sprawl from happening, to protect the really important open spaces in the rural parts of town. The town has also had a few really successful recent zoning reform efforts. This was the recent downtown rezoning that happened a couple of years ago, and then also the rezoning along Route 1 for a commercial corridor. We also noticed in our research and working on this chapter and talking to different folks was that there's a lot more room for zoning reform to happen to help continue to direct how growth occurs in the town. One of the things that is really of note is the new state law that is Section 3A of the Zoning Act. This has to do with multifamily zoning. This is something that Wrentham is going to have to deal with and comply with. So we think that that's really important from a land use perspective, making sure that you can have multifamily development in places where it's appropriate. We also know that Wrentham has the open space residential development bylaw, but that's maybe a little underutilized. And so this is an opportunity to make sure that whenever new subdivisions are happening, that open space can be preserved, and so that some of the town's open space goals are being met. And so there are some opportunities to maybe tweak that zoning bylaw to make it more effective. The use regulations and the zoning bylaw could probably be updated to reflect just the changing of how businesses and economic development uses have changed over time. And then also, we've heard throughout this planning process that it's really important to have walkable neighborhoods, that people want to be able to access places by walking or biking. So making sure that the zoning bylaw and development regulations can really promote those walkable neighborhoods and places. Next slide. One of the other key findings that came out of the land use and zoning analysis is that I'm sure all of you know Wrentham has no public sewer. And so this really limits the type of development that can occur. Right now, Wrentham zoning allows for large lots to be able to accommodate having on-site septic. And that's kind of working against some of the goals to preserve open space or to have walkable places. Whenever you have large spread out houses, it's harder to have more efficient land development. We also think that there's a lot of opportunity to continue with the targeted planning and zoning efforts that have been happening to make sure that some of these other kind of cross-cutting goals are being met. So things like making sure that new development, whenever it happens, that it's where infrastructure already exists. This is more efficient from a fiscal side of things for the town providing services. It's also more sustainable from just a land consumption point of view. We also think that there is an opportunity whenever you're doing targeted planning and zoning efforts to make sure that public investments and things like either transportation or parks or bike lanes, those are strategic whenever you can kind of make sure that they're connecting existing centers. And lastly, the growth, doing this in a more targeted planning and zoning strategic way, it can achieve these kind of overarching goals of preserving the open space in Wrentham, making sure that the historic character in Wrentham is preserved, and then making Wrentham more walkable and bike friendly and expanding housing options in town. The map on the slide kind of shows where some targeted zoning and planning efforts could really work to achieve these different goals. Places like Town Center, where you've already done a lot of work, the Route 1 corridor, continuing to do work in that area to make sure that the use regulations are really consistent with what the folks want to see in that area. Doing work around the premium outlets, Sheldonville Village Center, to make sure that that kind of stays a historic village center that's a lower density, but still, really significant. And then the Wrentham Development Center is a big opportunity for some coordination with the state to make sure that if growth happens there, that it's consistent with how residents want it to be. Next slide. So as Josh mentioned, we did a survey at the end of the last year, and we asked a few questions about land use. One of the questions actually was a throwback to phase 1, where we asked, where should new growth go? And so the chart on this slide shows the responses from that phase 1 survey. At that time, a lot of folks said that most new growth should either happen downtown on the vacant land behind South Street or along Route 1 or near the premium outlets. So when we did this phase 2 survey at the end of last year, we wanted to see if this was still the sentiment. And so about 81% of people said, yes, this is generally still the plan, that we should continue to focus growth in these areas that we've been focusing on in the past. Next, please. We also had an option for folks to write in comments about growth, and there were a lot of really, really great comments. I think all of the survey results are on the website if you want to go take a look. We wanted to call out a few that really kind of, I thought, encapsulated some of the themes that we had seen. A lot of folks mentioned that there's a lot of potential with the Wrentham Developmental Center, that this site and campus could be redeveloped to be a little bit more of a community asset. We also saw that there was opportunities for small business growth in places like downtown and maybe in Wampum Corner, where there are already some small businesses. And then also that growth should make sure and respect the historical nature of the town. The town of Wrentham has a great history. And so if new development happens or redevelopment happens, we want to make sure that it's preserving that uniqueness of Wrentham. We also asked, where do you want to see less growth? And so this is a heat map. Folks could kind of put a pinpoint on the map to show where they wanted less growth to occur. And where it's red, that means that that's where the most dots were. You can kind of see that around the lakes is one of the areas, around the state forest, around Sheldonville. So this is, again, kind of in line with the growth trajectory of past planning efforts and where the town has been focusing. And then there was another question that asked about the types of development. So as I mentioned, the land use chapter can include strategies to guide what development and redevelopment looks like. And so we asked about the different types of development can occur and where those would be most appropriate. It's probably not surprising that when we asked folks where they wanted to see pedestrian-friendly retail or restaurants or office, that was mostly in town center. And also a little bit in Wampum Corner in Sheldonville. When we asked about the pedestrian-friendly, more like mixed uses, that was again town center. Smaller scale auto-oriented retail, restaurants and offices, that's more appropriate in maybe the Route 1 area or near the premium outlets. And lastly, we asked about the larger scale, more auto-oriented retail, restaurant or office uses. These are things like maybe a Home Depot or something. And a lot of folks said nowhere, about a quarter of folks. But then of course, a lot of folks said that Route 1 was maybe a more appropriate area for that. And so now we get to the fun part of the draft goals. So we took all of the information that came from the existing conditions analysis, conversations with different folks, the 2 surveys. We did a focus group as part of this work, and put together these draft goals that we're hoping to get your feedback on tonight. We see opportunities to promote walkable neighborhoods and existing village centers to avoid sprawl, advanced preservation of open space and rural landscapes, continue strategic planning and zoning efforts to help shape how growth occurs, leverage public and private investments to strengthen existing centers, partner with the state to help shape the future of the Wrentham Developmental Center. And all of these sort of work to encourage more sustainable development that can maximize Wrentham's existing infrastructure, promote walkable, connected neighborhoods, and then protect the rural lands and open space that make Wrentham unique. So we really want to get your feedback on these and have you help us to refine these and reflect what the community wants for their land use and zoning goals.
Great, thank you, Andrea, so much for setting the groundwork for us to discuss land use and zoning. So I've got breakout rooms set up. So we have 6 MAPC and town planner facilitators. And so we'll put you into those rooms. There's about 9 or 10 people for each room. And what we're asking, the facilitators will share with you a Jamboard, which they'll also share on the screen. And all of us can input sticky notes on those Jamboards. We ask that you please don't do much else with the Jamboards, because as a editor, you can do other things like delete a page on accident. So just try to stick with that sticky note. Our facilitators will show you how that works. But then you'll be able to share with us both verbal comments and sort of digital comments as if we were in a room together putting things on a poster. So this will help us gather feedback. Again, we're looking for ways to strengthen these sets of goals so they really do reflect what you desire for the town. So I will open those rooms now and hand you across to the facilitators. So Good luck with conversations. Thank you. So you should get a button on your screen that pops up and you can just join that room. Hi, Heather. We're just in some breakout rooms right now, so I'll send you across to one. So we're doing some discussion about land use and zoning currently. So I'll sign you up for one. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us. We're in breakout discussions about land use and zoning currently, so I'll just assign you to a room and you can join one of those discussions. All right, welcome back, everyone. I know that to close those breakout rooms can be jarring, so I'm glad that you all made it back. And thank you for the engaging discussions. I was able to pop in and out of the rooms and heard some great discussion going on in each of them. So thank you for engaging with us on those draft goals. We'll certainly strengthen them. So we did want to ask, before we move on to the next topic, we have an exit poll of sorts for the land use and zoning topic. And it's simply, if you reflect on the draft set of goals, do you feel that they are very close, all the way down to way off in terms of what you thought land use and zoning goals, or think land use and zoning goals should be for the town? This helps us gauge sort of how deep a revision to make based upon your feedback this evening. So it looks like people are still responding. So far, I see that the largest group is close. 49% of the 80% who have voted say that it is close. 14% say very close. 20% are in the neutral category. And 7% say not close, and 7% say way off. All right, so it looks like 90% have voted now. I appreciate that. So we'll close that poll. Again, I think the largest group remains 53% at close. All right, so the next topic is recreation, land use, or I mean open space and recreation. And so I will be presenting land use, I mean not land use, I will be presenting open space and recreation. So you need to listen to me for a little bit more. So about a quarter of the land, 3,200 acres in Wrentham, is permanently protected open space. That's quite good. Over 1/3 of the public open space in Wrentham is part of the state forest system, and that includes the Gilbert Hills State Forest, the Wrentham State Forest, and the Franklin State Forest. All of those are open to the public and maintained by the Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR. On the map on the screen, you can see the areas shaded in the darker green color are the permanently protected open space areas that are distributed throughout the town. An additional 1,400 acres have limited protection, with properties taking part in the Chapter 61 program. And that's a program where a property owner receives tax benefits for conserving land. So that is a limited protection that can be, that arrangement can be revoked by the property owner's choosing. Open space is a high priority. Open space protection, excuse me, is a high priority for the community. We've seen that in the survey. The town has an engaged open space committee that is actively working on land protection. They're already established and already doing great work. The town also has a recently completed open space and recreation plan from 2020. However, there are some high-profile properties which are unprotected in the town today, examples of which are the Wrentham Developmental Center, which we talked about in Andrea's presentation for the land use and zoning. Also things like the Big Apple Farm or the Cooks Valley Farm. So those are notable open spaces which are not protected in any way today. So those could be left to the property owner's whims. The most recent land purchase for open space protection was the Rice Field Complex at the Wrentham Developmental Center. In terms of other needs for recreation, there really is a need for additional funding for continued maintenance and staffing of the recreational facilities. Another important open space and recreation investment on the horizon is the Metacomic Greenway. That will be an important feature to help link assets and increase connections to open spaces without a car. Protection of water resources is another high priority for the community that we've seen. Uniquely, Wrentham is located at the headwaters of 4 different watersheds, including the Blackstone, Charles, Taunton, and 10-mile rivers. These rivers and associated streams, lakes, and wetlands are critical features of Wrentham and a part of the natural resource systems. On this map, you can see these natural surface water systems and their distribution throughout the town. So surface water features are also a part of the natural systems which provide Wrentham's drinking water through a series of groundwater wells. Local and state regulations are in place to protect water quality, including the local watershed protection district. As mentioned, the town completed an open space and recreation plan in 2020. It will provide more depth and detail on the topic than the master plan, but the master plan will be complementary to it. So we're making sure that the two are coordinated and partner documents. The town also recently completed a water system master plan report in November 2021, which will be referenced in this section and also in the community facilities section of the master plan. So that took a close look at the infrastructure which is supporting the drinking water system in the town. From the phase 2 survey, we have some great direction from the nearly 800 respondents. The most important goals for recreation were defined as creating new multi-purpose trails, such as the Metacomic Greenway, improving walking and biking access to parks and open space, and investing in the town common and Sweat Park. You can see some of the other goals underneath it as well. Regarding open space, the survey results point to the most important goals of protecting water quality, protecting active farms and farmland, and protecting areas of wildlife habitat and the connections between them. And these are all consistent with the open space and recreation plan as well. So for open space, our draft set of goals are on the screen now. I'll just talk through them quickly. So from those sources, the survey, the existing conditions analysis, and documents such as the OSRP, we've put this list together. So protecting watersheds and maintaining water quality, advancing open space preservation and protection, expanding multimodal connections and access to open space and recreation, investing in and improving existing resources, recreation facilities and programs, strengthening accessibility and inclusiveness, and protecting sensitive habitats and wildlife corridors. So hopefully these are, if you've participated in the open space and recreation plan a couple of years ago, these are familiar, and we're not necessarily trying to invent new ground in this topic particularly, but really trying to elevate and reinforce a lot of the good work which has already taken place in the town. So hopefully this sounds familiar and should be of high interest and priority for the town. So with that, we'll follow the same model. With this starting point, we invite your feedback, comments, and questions to help strengthen this set of draft goals for open space and recreation. And I'll open the same breakout rooms. I think you'll be in the same composition as you were previously with the same facilitators. So hopefully that will help the rapport and dynamic a little bit to help us flow right into a good discussion. And then the breakout rooms will be open again for just over 15 minutes. So we have some time for that discussion and using the Jam boards as we did previously. So if you're more familiar with that as well. I will open those rooms now and you're welcome to get into those conversations. Thank you. Hi, Robin. Thank you for joining us. We're in the middle of a breakout room discussion on open space and recreation. So I will just have you send you to a room right now. Those discussions are just about concluded, though. Hello, welcome back. We'll let everyone come back with us. Looks like some conversations are still concluding. All right, it looks like you're all cycling back now. Again, thank you for your great insights and conversation. I was able to pop in and out of some rooms and really thoughtful comments, so we really appreciate that. Similarly, as we did last time around, we have a exit poll for open space and recreation. And so again, reflecting on the full set of goals that you just contemplated for open space and recreation, do you feel the goals are close, very close, close, neutral, not so close, or way off for what you would be expecting to see or would like to see for open space and recreation in the town? And just to note too, while I have this moment, I don't think we've described yet in this meeting that these are the goals. So this is a relatively high level, and the master plan will create strategies under each of the goals once the goals become a little more solidified with your feedback and perspectives. So those strategies might get to more specifics. I heard a fair amount of specifics in the discussions that I was able to sneak in, jumping around from the rooms. So those specifics are more likely to show up either as strategies or actions underneath some of these goals. And so we're taking down each of the notes about the specifics you've told us, and we'll find a home for some of those as this process moves forward as well. So we've got 83% of the participants responded to this poll question now about the open space and recreation goals. 63% are in the close category, followed by 20% in very close and 20% in neutral. And in this case, no one has responded either not close or way off. So the good work of the open space and recreation plan has led us in a very positive direction, it appears. So we're coordinating closely with that effort. I will close this poll, so thank you for responding to that. And to keep us moving along, our next topic is transportation, and that will be presented by Mara Holland and Adi Nocher.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. My name is Mara. I'm excited to talk to you all about transportation today. So just to get us started, to do some framing, when we talk about transportation, we're really talking about a wide range of ways people get around. So thinking about walking, biking, driving, public transit, also thinking about the different devices people use to get around, like a wheelchair or a skateboard, or a parent pushing a stroller. So all these different ways that people get around, we want to just have that as some framework and context as we go into this presentation. Next slide, thank you. So within Wrentham, there are 96 total miles of roadway, and about a quarter of those are state roads, which present a little bit of challenge sometimes to the town about how to make changes to some of those main roadways as far as safety and multimodal changes, things like that. We've seen as a little bit of a challenge that exists in the town currently. The average household drives about 80 miles per day, so there is a lot of driving and long range driving happening for folks who live in the town. And again, that's pre-COVID numbers, so might have changed during COVID. Also, the walking and biking infrastructure in Wrentham is lacking at the moment. There's about 25% of Wrentham streets have sidewalks on at least one side. There are no bike facilities. However, we saw during COVID that pedestrian activity doubled over the last 2 years, and bike activity increased in 2020, but then fell back again below pre-pandemic levels in 2021. And that data is from statewide data called streetlight data, where they get data from cell phones. So that's how we know how people are kind of moving about. And it gives us a good understanding of how people are using these spaces, both now and in the past as well. And so we're seeing that there's definitely a need and an interest in Wrentham for more walking, more biking. And we want to see we think the infrastructure there is could improve to help more folks access those modes. Right now, the street infrastructure is really in need of repair. There's about $15 million in deficit of maintenance needed to repair current roadways in Wrentham. Also, safety on Wrentham streets is currently a pretty big challenge. There's about 350 crashes that happen per year in Wrentham that we definitely want to address through this master plan to make sure that safety is a big outcome of some of the recommendations that we provide. Next. So some of our key findings, as I'm sure is not news to anyone, Wrentham is very car-centric. And that means the ability for residents to really use other modes of transportation, such as walking, biking, rolling, public transit, is a little bit more challenging, since a lot of the both land use and the streets were really designed with a vehicle in mind. As I mentioned before, really safe, accessible walking is lacking throughout town, but we've heard through focus groups, through the survey, that a lot of people really do want to walk to get to places, whether it's to downtown, to school, to recreation areas, that it's really a big interest for folks to have those connections available. And opportunities for a greater range of mobility does exist in Wrentham. You know, we have GATRA's micro transit pilot, we have the option, the potential for the Metacomic Greenway. We have a couple of things that are possible in Wrentham that might just need a little bit more resources and program support to make them a little bit more viable for the community. We've also heard a lot about parking, and we've noticed via a site visit that parking is pretty plentiful in downtown, but instituting a few more parking management strategies might be really helpful to ensure that parking works really well for the downtown area. And as I mentioned before, nearly 70% of the town streets are town controlled, but there are some really crucial intersections and major streets that are state owned, which is a real challenge for the town to make safety improvements that would really be beneficial for residents. And so I'll hand it off to Adi now to talk a little bit more about our survey results.
Thanks so much, Mara. Hello, everybody. Great to be here with you tonight. Adi Nochur, Senior Transportation Planner at MAPC. And like Mara said, I just want to share a few survey findings, then we'll pivot to some of our draft goals for transportation, which I think you'll see align nicely with our key findings. So I'm looking at what are the most important transportation improvements that folks want to see in town. I'm sure it's no surprise improving safety at high collision intersections rises to the top. 60% of folks feeling that's the most important issue, but also making it safer and easier to walk to and within the downtown. We've already heard about this quite a bit tonight, making it safer and easier to walk and bike to school, improving and maintaining roadways, reducing vehicular speeds. So really thinking about improving roadway safety, but also that multimodal access for folks walking and biking is really critical in the downtown and throughout the town more broadly. Next slide. So again, thinking about multimodal transportation access, where would folks want to go if it were, or where would folks go more often if it were easier to get there via walking, biking, or transit? Folks could choose up to 3 options. No surprise that downtown rises to the top of the list. 71% of folks feel like they would go to downtown more if there were car-free ways to get there. Other parks and recreation areas rises up high as well. 38% of people indicating that as a top priority. And then we get into some of the more specific recreation areas like Rice and Sweat Beach. 17% of folks prefer to drive. Schools are another place folks would want to access without a car if it were easier to do so. And you see a few illustrative comments here on the side as well. Folks really interested in the bike path development with the Metacomic Greenway. Sidewalks on busy streets would make riding and biking from home possible in Sheldonville. We certainly heard a lot about the lack of sidewalks throughout the town as a challenge, and more accessible options for people with disabilities and seniors. Certainly that would apply also from children walking to and from the schools as well. So as we think about vulnerable road users, how are we creating a safer and more accessible transportation for everybody? Next slide. And so where should roadway improvements be prioritized? This is another heat map you can see here. And I think we really see an emphasis on Town Common, Wampum Corner, and the premium outlets, which I don't think is any surprise based on how folks might experience those roadways. And if you look at some of the statewide crash data from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's crash portal, that I think these red areas of the map align with where you really see high crashes. So of course, no surprise that we'd want to prioritize roadway improvements in those areas. Next slide. So I'm pivoting to our draft goals, assessing parking needs and implementing parking management strategies in Wrentham's downtown. As Mara alluded to earlier, we've certainly heard a lot about this. And the angled parking on South Street we know is a challenge. Decreasing dependence on single occupancy private vehicles and increasing use of GATRA's transit options in Wrentham. Again, as Mara mentioned, Wrentham is a very car-centric town. So are there ways that we can improve transit options in the town to give people more means to get around? Certainly related to that as well as supporting walking and biking and rolling infrastructure. especially walking infrastructure within and connecting to the downtown and other key destinations. We've mentioned roadway safety for all road users, especially the most vulnerable, including people walking and biking, children, seniors, and people with disabilities. And planning for the future, what might it mean to think about electronic and autonomous vehicles or other transportation technologies, whether it's scooters, electronic bicycles, other ways that folks could be getting around that are not cars, but are emerging technologies that we might want to see more of. And so kind of with this value proposition of wanting to encourage sustainable mobility that maximizes the infrastructure, promotes connected neighborhoods, and contributes to environmental health. So that's a preview of our goals, and I'll turn it back over to Josh to lead us into our last round of breakouts. Thank you.
Adi, thank you so much. Thank you, Mara, as well. So you should all be very familiar with this process now. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and you should see the familiar faces again, and we'll spend about 15 minutes or a little bit more to talk about transportation and take a look at that Jamboard as well. So I'm opening the rooms now. Thank you so much. Hi, Evan and Andrea. So we're in the middle of a breakout discussion in the transportation topic right now. So I'm going to just go ahead and assign you to a room so you can join in with one of those small group discussions. Welcome back. We'll give people a minute to get back from those discussions. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us and participating in that final breakout for this evening. And we do have, as we had for the other topics, the exit poll for transportation, which I will launch right now. And that asks, if you reflect on that full set of transportation draft goals, do you feel that they are about right, very close, close, neutral, not close, or way off? And that will again help us to judge the feedback that you've given us and how dramatically the goals should be adapted. So it looks like that was a pretty quick turnaround this time. So we've got 92% participation. Most answers fall within the close category, 56%. This time followed by the neutral category of 27%, then very close has 12%, and then not close has 2%, and way off has 2%. Looks like 97% have voted, so I will go ahead and close that. Thank you for the speedy response. All right, well, thank you for bearing with us on this jam-packed agenda, but I did want to share with you before we all depart for the evening that we have a paired meeting with this one next Tuesday on March 29th at the same time, 7 p.m. via Zoom, a second meeting which covers the remaining 3 topics of the master plan: historical and cultural resources, community facilities and services, and energy and sustainability. We will be reviewing the comments and feedback gathered at this session. We appreciate all of the efforts to get your thoughts across to us. If you felt you didn't get a chance to say what you would have liked or have additional questions, you are certainly welcome to follow up with me specifically and our team in general. And I will go ahead and put my email in the chat, and it is jfiala, F-I-A-L-A is my last name, at mapc.org. So you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to respond and give you a chance to chat if you'd like to chat more or answer any questions that you may have. These are, there will be more occasions within this process to have a community forum. We hope in our next go around, a little bit closer to summer, that we will be able to host an in-person event rather than a Zoom event. So we're looking forward to that as well. And lastly, I refer you to the project website, which is www.mapc.ma/Wrentham Vision. And you'll see all of the materials that have happened through phase 1 and phase 2 of the master plan, and can download reports, full summaries of the survey responses. And we also have 3 documents, existing conditions overviews, which actually go into a little more depth than we were able to cover this evening in our presentations for the 3 topics we just talked about. So they're chock full of data and information on those 3 topics. So we invite you to take a look at those. And with that, we almost hit our 8:30 mark on the nose, just a couple minutes over, but thank you for bearing with us and being patient and allowing us to get through a lot of information this evening. And we really appreciate the time that all of you have devoted to making sure that this Wrentham master plan is the best reflection of residents' wishes and goals for the next 10 years in the town. With that, we appreciate you and your presence. Have a great night.